So here we are with the first fit. I've done or started work on the front of the canopy first, and not too bad a job. I've marked where there's a little bit of a bump here which is holding it off further down, so I'm going to take a little bit more off that bit there between those two lines, and similarly and the same on the other side. It's pretty good, but there's a high spot there between those two lines, well, in fact between all the way down to there, which just needs a little more taken off it, and that'll allow it to sit further forward. Now, of course, we don't want to make it too precision a fit, because otherwise it'll be a bugger to open and close. But it does need to follow the line of the windscreen surround as closely as it can, and then we'll introduce a gap afterwards by fitting it from when we do fit the back. But quite pleased with that. Pretty good job. And so I'm just going to take off some of those areas there just to finish that off, and then I can have a go at doing the back end. So I've put it back on my little jig on the table here, and we can see the marks here where I'll need to take it off, and similarly on the other side. Can't say that word, can I? Can't say similarly. The same on the other side. So as I said before, I've been using the trusty Dremel with the cutting disc on the end to actually cut through it. It's pretty easy, nice and easy to control, using both hands. One effectively I'm using one hand against the canopy itself to steady the other hand with the Dremel in it, and then to finish the edge I am using my trusty mini sander. It's just a standard DIY mini sander with coarse paper on the bottom of it, very coarse. If you use a finer one, it just blocks up and then doesn't do anything. With a coarse one, it seems to work quite well. So I'll busy away and use the sander on those two areas, and then we'll see if it's any better afterwards. So now, after having sanded those areas, it's looking pretty good all the way around there, and hopefully on the other side, let's have a look. Yeah, that's good enough, I think. Good enough. So that wasn't that difficult. Got the difficult one to do now, and I'm in two minds as to how to go about doing this. The back end, it's difficult to see because we've got a transparent thing here, but we've got to cut it basically along this line here, and I'm not sure whether to put the tape this side or tape it that on this side. It's easier to tape it on this side of the line and then cut down. The problem being that when you tape this side, you cover up your line that you're trying to to cover to. But anyway, I don't know. We'll give it a go. Give it our best shot. As I said before, I have a spare. Hopefully we won't need to use it. But that's not too bad. The other thing I noticed this on somebody else's video, because I watched every video I could find on doing the canopy. That the sides are going to be not difficult to cut, but difficult to fix, because it naturally wants to balloon out, and it's probably the best part of an inch away from the frame in the center here. And I noticed on others where they have had to push it in, and there's a huge bend. You know, you can see the reflection of the bend around this area to try and get that in flat. So that could be a bit of a challenge, but we'll see. Anyway, more later. So I've masked down the side there, and you're probably looking at it thinking, he's gone off track a little bit. But actually no. One of the things you must do when you're doing the back end is make sure that you push or somehow fix the front end against the side of the aircraft, because if you look here, when I push it in and let it go, it moves. And so that's the correct position there. And the same the other side. Let's have a look around the other side. Again, we've masked all the way down there, and there's a little bit of a gap that you can see there, but when I push the front edge in, that gap disappears. Ultimately, there's supposed to be a 1.6 millimeter gap all the way round, so basically I'm cutting it at the moment to fit, and I'm probably going to have to trim some off, but until it's sitting down in its correct position, because at the moment the back end is obviously being held up. It's not actually sitting down at the level it's supposed to be, because it's sitting on the outside of the turtle deck, and it will be recessed below the turtle deck, so it's probably got to drop. I don't know whether you can see in there or not. It's probably got to drop 1/4 of an inch, 6 mil, something of that order, which is also why I've cut these a little bit, because I expect this to move forwards when the back end moves down. All very complicated, and I'm not sure I've got it right, but we'll see. That's what I'm going to do next, is cut that one. Probably not tonight, because I'm feeling a bit tired. I'll probably do it tomorrow, I would think. Although I am cooking a meal for 7 people tomorrow night, so I've got to prepare all that. But we'll see anyway. I'll carry on as and when I get some time. See you later. So, here it is after 3 cuts so far. I cut it oversized to start off with, and then I've taken it back 3 millimeters at a time until it actually is just about fitting inside the cockpit. It's still not sitting down on the frame inside, so there's still more to come off, but not looking too bad. and round the other side it's very, very similar. It's sitting just inside the ledge but not sitting down on the frame yet. There's more to come off. But what I'm going to do is, the front is pretty good, but I'm going to take a little bit more off in this area coming down here, which is currently touching all the way down, to allow the top to go forwards. There's about a millimetre gap at the top at the front. So I'm going to take this off a little bit to allow that to come forwards, and the same on the other side. There's a gap, as you can see there, and then from that point onwards there is no gap, and at the bottom it's actually overlapping on this side. So I'm going to take a bit more off on both sides, let that come forwards, and then I'm going to cut the back end so that I've got a 3mm gap, and that then I will then split between the front and the back to give the 1.5mm gap at both ends that's required. So first job is to ease this into position so that we've got no gap all the way round. More later. So at that point my trusty Dremel blew up. And it's lasted a long time. I've had it a long time, but it just died, and so I've had to wait a couple of days for a replacement one to arrive. But it arrived yesterday, and I immediately started work again on the canopy, and I'll show you what I've done. So I did indeed cut the rear end, and then spaced the front 1.5mm. So there's a 1.5mm gap all the way up the front. And at that point I decided that the only way this was going to work was if I actually started to secure the whole thing. So what I did then was I drilled the holes around the front only, and clecoed it on. I then trimmed off the sides, both sides, so that the canopy would go in flush where it's supposed to go. And then I spent a long time taking a little bit off at a time to get the canopy correct at the rear end. And so there's a 1.5mm gap all the way up and around that on both sides. And at that point I then drilled the holes and clecoed the rear into position, and then finally trimmed and drilled and clecoed on both sides. And so it is actually all done, and I'm quite pleased with it. It's fits nicely all the way around. It's completely attached to the frame inside now with the clecos, and so the next thing to do is to strip it all apart and sort out all the holes. Some of the ones in the frame, canopy frame, have got to be threaded, drilled and threaded, and the ones in the canopy itself have got to be drilled out, countersunk, most of them, ready for the fixings. And we'll take it from there. So that was 2 afternoons work, so about 6 hours in total since the Dremel broke. It's taken a while, but a little bit at a time. Try it, see where it's fitting, and just take off little bits at a time until it fits. More later.